Susanoo no Mikoto is the kami of seas, storms, and summer in Japanese myth and legend. He is the son of Izanagi, born from his nose when the god was purifying himself after his frankly hellish divorce with his wife Izanami. Susanoo is the younger brother to the sun goddess Amaterasu and the moon god, or sometimes goddess, Tsukuyomi. The most comprehensive early mentions of Susanoo in text can be found in the two oldest Japanese compilations of mythology and record, the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki. Strangely, however, his characterization changes a good bit between these two works. In the Kojiki, the story of Susanoo is one of character growth. In a literary perspective, he goes from a young wild thing to a more mature but still mischievous kami through his various trials and hardships. His journey to maturity is heavily involved in the reconnection of heaven and the underworld, the divide between which is symbolized by the divorce of Izanagi and Izanami. In the Nihonji, on the other hand, his story is vastly different due to various changes in the mythology. The most significant of these changes is that the divorce of Izanagi and Izanami is only minimally discussed, and happens during Susanoo's life instead of before his birth. Susanoo himself seems to be a much more suspicious and unlikable character in the mythos. He is born an evil god, and while he sometimes acts heroically, he is always a villain to be eventually deposed. One legend that exemplifies the changes made to Susanoo's character between the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki is the story of his two banishments and the adventures he had between those two. The story goes that one day Susanoo began throwing terrible tantrums. Susanoo was neglecting his duties in ruling the land his father Izanagi had given him to rule, and generally was acting a nuisance, letting his beard get extra long, throwing several horrible fits that killed lots of people, and just generally being a bad ruler. Izanagi saw this and did not want to put up with it, and so he banished his son from the lands he had been given to rule and told him he wasn't allowed to come back until he'd straightened his act out. Susanoo immediately decided that the perfect solution was to go and visit his sister. So he went to visit his sister. Amaterasu saw him coming and had no idea why he was coming. The two of them didn't get along very well, and so she naturally assumed that he was coming to conquer her territory. When Susanoo arrived at his sister's house, he was shocked to see her ready for war. He was also slightly offended, and the two got to quarreling. In order to solve their quarrel, they decided to have a kami-making contest. Each of them would make a certain number of new kami, and then whoever had made the better kami would win the contest. Regardless of who actually won the contest, a fact which changes between the two versions, Susanoo began to throw even more tantrums. In this instance, he started ruining his sister's crops, he started ruining her properties, and Amaterasu continued to make excuses for him until, that is, he threw a flayed horse into her weaving house and, in the Kojiki version, killed one of her servants, and in the Nihon Shoki version, caused Amaterasu to injure herself in a very private female part while weaving. Amaterasu noped out of there and went to vacation in a cave. It took the other kami an exorbitant amount of effort and time to figure out how to get Amaterasu out of the cave, and so Susanoo was banished once again, this time for good. The changes made to Susanoo's character do so by making him less sympathetic. In the original tale, Susanoo's first set of tantrums were because he wanted to see his mother. They were not an adult reaction, they were not a responsible reaction, and so to be condemned, but they were still understandable. His later tantrums against his sister were also understandable, if silly and childish, and thus to be reprimanded. And so while he acted in basically the same way in the two versions of the tales, in one version he seems to be a immature, childish god who wants to get his way and who does not like to be told no. And in the other version, he is a cruel god who simply wants to cause problems for other people regardless of how it makes them feel because he thinks it's fun. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed my cute little chibi illustrations. Sarah out.